Hello, welcome to the Resilient Mind series. Right. You're welcome. If you are watching me live, I'm glad that you're here. If you're watching the replay, you are also welcome. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we are talking about something that often look like maturity. Yes, it look like maturity, responsibility, and good communication. But psychologically, it is usually anxiety. Yes. It sounds maturity, it sounds responsibility, it sounds like a good communication. But psychologically, it is usually anxiety. That is over-explaining stuff, over-explaining things. I used to explain myself before anyone even questioned me. If I made a decision, I justify it. If I said no, I added reasons. If I make decision, I try to justify it. If I say no, I added reason for saying no. And if I had an opinion, I soften it. I thought that would make me thoughtful. Yes, I thought it would make me thoughtful. I thought that would make me responsible, but it didn't. It didn't. It was anxiety, trying to secure approval before disapproval had a chance to appear. Yes, you heard me. If I say no, I added reasons. If I had an opinion, I soften it. I thought that would make me thoughtful. I thought that would make me responsible, but it didn't. It was anxiety, trying to secure approval before disapproval had a chance to appear. Over-explaining is really about clarity. It is not about clarity, over-explaining. It is about control. Yes, it is about control. It is an attempt to control how we are perceived, how others perceive us, how we are perceived. And once we see it clearing, we can't unseen it. Once we see it clearing, we cannot unseen it. Let's take our time to define it. Let's take our time to define it. Oh, where did that stop? Really? Thank you. Can you tell me when? Can you tell me when the sun went off or the volume? Uh-oh. Can you remember when the sun went off? Can somebody tell me? Imose, can you tell me? I'm not sure when it went off, but maybe I'll have to start all over again. When did the sun went off? Anyway, I'll go to maybe start from then. Let me just run through. Anyway, let's define this clearing. Over-explanatory is anticipatory defense. Maybe growing up, your no wasn't accepted without pushback. Maybe your tone was polished. Maybe your feeling had to be justified. Maybe you were told you were too much, too sensitive, too direct. So you adapted. You learn that if I explain enough, I will stay safe. If I clarify enough, I won't be rejected. If I defend myself early, I won't lose connection. Over-explaining becomes a preemptive apology. You are not communicating, you are managing anxiety. And that distinction matters. Over-explaining is not maturity, like I said before. It is self-protection. The hidden cost of... I actually asked a question because I was curious. I wanted to know, when you notice explaining, yourself, over-explaining yourself, is it usually with authority, figures, close relationship, or strangers? In the comment section, message section, just type one of those ones. Let me know, when you notice yourself over-explaining, who do you do that with? Is it with authority, with figures, close relationship, or strangers? Just type whichever one that applies to you. Interestingly, in close relationship, okay. So let's talk about hidden costs, the hidden cost of over-explaining. Emotionally, it creates exhaustion. You leave conversation replaying what you have said. You wonder if you have said too much. You worried if you sounded defensive. It increases internal noise. And identify-wise, it trains self-doubt. Identity-wise, it creates self-doubt. When you over-explain, you unconsciously signal that your decision is open to negotiation. And people respond to that signal. If you sound unsure, they push. And if you justify excessively, they question more. That is what happened. Confidence is concise. And that over-explanation is not maturity, it is anxiety. Over-explaining doesn't make you clearer. It doesn't make people understand you better. It makes you smaller, rather. And when your explanation is longer than your boundary, something is off, definitely. When your explanation is longer than your boundary, something is off. Let's talk about the psychological part of it, psychological roots of over-explaining. If saying less makes you anxious, that anxiety is information. If saying less makes you anxious, that anxiety is information. It's likely mean your nervous system equal your bravery with risk. If you were conditioned to believe that disagreement leads to rejection, you will over-explain to preserve connection. I will take that again. If you were conditioned to believe that disagreement leads to rejection, you will over-explain to preserve connection because you wouldn't want to lose connection with those people. So you become hyper responsible for how you are perceived. You are hyper responsible for how you are perceived, of how people perceive you. Because of that, you manage your tone, you manage reactions, and you manage other people's comfort. Because of that, you try to manage your tone, you try to manage your reaction, and you manage other people's comfort. This is no longer communication. It is hypervigilance. That is what it is. Any hypervigilance feel like maturity because it look like that. It look thoughtful, but it is actually fear trying to prevent loss. It is fear trying to prevent loss. That is what it is. Who taught you that no require justification? Who? Who taught you that? That no require your justification. You can say no without justification. Think about it. How did you come to that term? How did you come to realization? How did you come to that thinking that no require justification? For you to say no, you must justify your saying no. How did that come about? Think about it. You don't have to answer publicly. Just notice. Just notice. At any time you say no, you have to justify it. Where is that feeling coming from? How did you get to that? Who taught you that? You don't have to put an answer there. Just notice it within you. Have a think about it. That is psychological side of over-explaining yourself. Let's think about reframing this. Let's think about it. How do we reframe this over-explaining yourself? Boundaries are statements, not debates. Boundaries are statements, not debates. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to give short answers. And you are allowed to disappoint someone without defending yourself. You are allowed. People can misunderstand you. Yes, it's allowed. You are allowed to give short answers without giving deep explanation. You are allowed to disappoint someone. If someone feels disappointed from what you have said, it is allowed without you having to defend yourself. We are talking about boundary here. It's not a debate. It's a statement. When you start setting a boundary, it's not a debate. It's a statement. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to give short statements. You are allowed to disappoint someone without defending yourself. Because resilience is the ability to tolerate brief misunderstanding without collapsing into explanation. I will take that again. Resilience is the ability to tolerate brief understanding without collapsing into explanation. And mind you, discomfort does not equal danger. Discomfort does not equal danger. Anxiety is not a moral compass. Anxiety is not a moral compass. Maturity communication is brief. Mature communication is brief, not over-explaining. All right. Let's have some practical shift. Let's have some practical shifts. We've talked about boundary, we talk now. Let's have some practical shifts. Let's practice how not to over-explain yourself. So here is what this look like in practice. We'll be talking in theory sense. Let's see how it look like in practice. Hello, Sister Otote. It's nice having you here. So we'll be talking about explaining too much, over-explanation. So we talk about setting boundaries. Now we want to talk about practical shifts. So here are what this look like in practice. Instead of, I am so sorry, I just can't because, instead of saying so, starting your statement with, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't just because. Why not just say, I won't be able to? Simple. Instead of saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't because, you can simply say, I won't be able to. You are allowed to do that. And let's take another one. I just feel like maybe, instead of saying that, I just feel like maybe you could simply say, this does work for me. This does not work for me. Instead of trying to explain it, I won't be able to, blah, blah, blah. You could simply say, this does not work for me. Notice the anxiety rising. Notice the anxiety rise. You don't argue with it. Don't argue with it. Don't smoothen it immediately. Don't add extra words to calm yourself. So let's say it together. And I want you to help me do something. Instead of you say, I'm so sorry, I can't just because, you could just say, I won't be able to do it. Not that you're rude, not in a rude way. Instead of it, I just feel like maybe this does not work for me. You might notice anxiety when you do that. You don't have to argue with that. You don't have to smoothen it immediately. Don't have to add extra words to explain or to calm yourself. Let it exist. That is how resilience build, or that is how you build resilience. You are teaching your nervous system that brevity is not abandonment. So with what we have said, what is one sentence that could shorten this week? You can respond calmly. Acknowledge briefly. That is a good one. Notice how much stronger that sound. You don't need to convince anyone to deserve respect. Over-explaining may have once protected you, but don't need that level of defense anymore. You don't have to convince anyone to deserve respect. Please have that in mind. Over-explaining may have protected you once, but you don't need that level of defense anymore. You can go back and listen and replay this episode and let it sink. If redirecting your explanation feel uncomfortable, that doesn't mean you are wrong. It means your nervous system is adjusting to a new standard. Over-explaining was a survivor. Resilience is clarity. All right, so as we come to the final session, I want you to take this with you. This is how resilience mind is built. This is how resilience mind is built. Because you will know that boundary is a statement, not a debate. Boundary, it's a statement, not a debate. You don't need to over-explain. To get respect. Don't be worried about disconnection. Over-explanation was a survivor. Clarity is a strength. So this is how resilient mind is built. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for coming. I love you. Bye and God bless you.